My name is Karan. I'm one of the test leads on the AppV product. We're all working out of Cambridge, as you know. And I have to tell you, I'm really excited to stand up here and talk about our PowerShell implementation. And I've been working on AppV for the last 3 years. And before that, I used to be in Redmond and working on multiple products, but the last of them was actually PowerShell version 2. So it's really fun for me to have worked on a product, worked on the PowerShell implementation after having worked on the PowerShell team, and now standing in front of you talking about it. So that's exciting times. Before I get started, here's sort of the session overview. And let me just quickly talk about what is it that I want you to take out of this session. Well, there's 3 things. The first of them is that I want to convince you that moving to PowerShell for the AppV product is the right thing for you as our customers. And just as a show of hands, I'd like to see how many of you are using PowerShell in your day-to-day work already. About a third almost, that's great. And I hope the folks who are using PowerShell will indulge me a little bit, and I hope still you'll take something out of the first third of the talk. Actually less than a third even, which is going to be about PowerShell, telling you what it is, how it works, and why it's good for you. The second, which is the meat of the talk, will be giving you an overview of the various areas in the product that we've implemented PowerShell, how those commandlets work, and how you can use them in your day-to-day work. And then the third part, which is a slightly more advanced topic, which is around taking PowerShell and integrating that into your existing tools. And this is feedback that we get quite often, actually, from customers who have integrated SFT MIME, for instance, into their existing software distribution mechanisms. And they want to know, well, great, that's great you're moving to PowerShell, but how do I now continue doing that with PowerShell? So that's the final bit that I'll be talking about. So quickly moving on, as I said, hopefully the folks who are using PowerShell day to day will indulge me a little bit. I just want to talk about what PowerShell is. It's multiple things, but primarily it's an interactive shell and a scripting language for automation. The whole product, PowerShell, is implemented on top of .NET. And if you've been following along, the V1 of the product was shipped somewhere around when Vista shipped. V2 ships in box with Windows 7. And V3 is now scheduled to ship with Windows 8. So that's sort of the rough timeline. And the tool set, the built-in tools, the commandlets as we call them, has been growing quite rapidly since V1 shipped. And so now we are in a situation where even the beta builds that you all probably have tried, the consumer preview of Windows 8, has thousands of commandlets that you just get out of the box. One of the big themes in PowerShell is this notion of consistency. And this manifests itself in a lot of different places. But the two that I'm concerned with right now is the fact that all of the commandlets have a very consistent naming pattern, which is the very popular, very familiar now, I hope, verb-noun naming convention. And that helps in whenever you log into a system and you're completely new to managing a particular product, it helps you in discovering what you can do with that product and how you can use it, how you can manage it, and so forth. The second thing that it helps with is the fact that the PowerShell engine is actually doing all of your parameter parsing. And what this means for you as users, end users, is that unlike the old CMD tools that we are all familiar with, where if you had 20 tools or 30 tools that you were using day to day, each one had its own way of parsing your command line arguments. And sure, maybe 2 of them worked one particular way, but another 5 worked in a slightly different way and had their own slight nuances. So you had to learn every single tool sort of almost from the ground up. Contrast that with PowerShell, where, as I said, the engine is doing all of that the legwork for the commandlets. And what that means is, once you learn how to use one set of commandlets in PowerShell, everything else that you learn from that point on, you get to leverage what you learned with the first set of commandlets. They all work in a very consistent fashion. The next thing is the fact that all of the commandlets in PowerShell return objects. And that might sound a little bit geeky and a little bit advanced, but what it essentially means is that, again, contrasting with the old way of doing things with CMD, if you ran a particular tool and for you to figure out if it succeeded or not, or if it did the right thing for you, you had to take the text output that the command line gave you and try to parse it. And that's just not a very robust way of doing things, because you're basically hoping and praying that the way the tool emits its text remains the same. If they change it just by a little bit, all of your text parsing doesn't work anymore. And then lastly, a few things that are really useful and really powerful are the fact that built in, you get remoting out of the box. What this means is you can do things like, I want to manage this particular server or this particular client, and you get that one-to-one remoting that you may be familiar with, for instance, from Telnet. But you also get one-to-N remoting, meaning I have a pool of 100 machines, and I want to do the same exact thing on those 100 machines. Here's the script, just go do it. And then lastly, if you're actually writing scripts and developing scripts as part of your work, you have a very rich, interactive scripting environment and a debugging environment built in. And so again, contrast that with batch files, where you were basically hoping and praying as you wrote them that they worked. And if you wanted to debug them, well, printf or echo this, echo that. Now you have a debugger built in. You can set breakpoints, do all of those things. And then finally, and I think this is one of the big reasons why moving to PowerShell makes a lot of sense, is the fact that it has really broad acceptance at this point. If you've been walking around listening to all of the sessions, certainly the big theme certainly is System Center. This is a System Center conference after all. But one of the other major themes is for sure PowerShell. And practically every product that is here presenting has a version of the talk that I'm giving today, which is how to use PowerShell with our product. And that is really important because unlike the SFT mine days when you were stuck in a silo all by yourself, you now have a very rich ecosystem that you get to leverage. If you're trying to do something with PowerShell, chances are someone has already done it and they've blogged about it. And that's important because you don't have to figure out from scratch how to do something with PowerShell. You may have to figure out how to do that particular thing with your product, but again, you get to leverage what someone's already figured out. So moving on, just a quick overview of what we have implemented and sort of get some prereqs out of the way. We are taking a bet on PowerShell version 3 in AppV 5.0, which means that as you're planning your deployments of AppV 5.0, you will have to make sure that PowerShell version 3 is installed on the box before you install the client. That is a requirement, by the way, for across the board for the AppV product. So the AppV server, sequencer, as well as the client have a dependency on version 3. In terms of the scheduling, version 3 is scheduled to ship with Windows 8. Obviously, those dates are not publicly available, but it'll ship at the same time. And for down level, AppV, as you know, supports Windows 7 and will support Windows 8. For Windows 7, the PowerShell version 3 download, PowerShell version 3 is available as a downloadable add-on pack. Now looking at the commandlets that we have implemented for AppV, you can think of these in 4 different roles that I'm talking about here. And each one, basically there are 4 key roles in the product, and we have PowerShell implementation across the 4 roles. The first one is the AppV client, and this is those names on the front of those bullet points. Those are the module names, and we'll circle back on that concept later on. But the AppV client module is what you would use for doing client management and package and connection group management on the client. The AppV server, by the way, before I move on, the AppV client module, you can think of that as being synonymous to SFT MIME and SFT tray in some ways. So if you're used to using those tools, the AppV client module gives you very similar functionality. The AppV server module is, in some ways, doesn't have any corollary in the previous product. We didn't have a way for you to automate tasks on the 4.5 server, but on the AppV 5.0 server we do, and all of that functionality ships as part of the AppV server module. And then the last two the modules that are listed are the package converter and the AppV sequencer. The package converter is the module you would use to convert all of your 4.5 and 4.6 packages. It's a very simple module, 2 commandlets that help you convert your library of 4.5 and 4.6 packages to AppV 5.0 packages. And then the last one over there is the AppV sequencer module, and this is what you would use for automating sequencer tasks. And again, there is a corollary for this in 4.6, which is the SFT sequencer command line. So if you have like a line of business application, for instance, that you need to sequence again and again because of updates or whatnot, you can automate those tasks using the AppV sequencer module. Now moving on, diving in a little bit more, here's let's look at the scenarios. As we were designing the AppV implementation, we were thinking along the lines of what are the different key scenarios that we want to enable for our customers. The client implementation of PowerShell really is targeting the 4 scenarios that are listed here. And it's fairly straightforward. As I said, it's package management, meaning adding and configuring packages, connection group management, adding and configuring connection groups on the client, and then the second one being managing your client configuration. So this would include things like enabling package scripting and various other configuration options that are available on the client. You can also configure them using group policy or through command line options that are available for the client installer. Today I'll be talking obviously about the PowerShell commandlets. And then lastly, you have the troubleshooting scenario, which is I'm trying to get this package to run, and I need to look into the package a little bit and figure out what's going on. So on the client, we have about 27 commandlets, right? And that sounds like a big number, and so you might be going, well, how am I going to figure out how all of these things work? And actually, a good way to pivot on the commandlets is to look at the nouns that we are using, and then look at the different verbs that you can apply to those nouns. And so here's the first set of verbs that we have, the first set of nouns that we have on the client. As you can see, the first two, AppV client package and AppV client connection group, those are fairly self-explanatory, the package noun and the connection group noun. And they have a very similar set of verbs that apply to them. And which means you can add, you can get, you can publish, unpublish, remove, and so forth. The publishing server noun is how you would add publishing servers to the client, meaning which publishing server does the client connect to and download its packages from. And again, you can get them, you can add, remove, set, and sync. The final set of nouns for the client, virtual process, AppV virtual process. This is sort of a troubleshooting noun. When things go wrong, you need to figure out what's going on, what virtual processes are running, start new virtual processes. This is how you would do that. And then the client configuration noun, as I said, this is how you would change configuration options on the client. That's enough talking. I'm going to move on to my first demo here. And the first demo will be sort of a quick walkthrough of the PowerShell commandlets on the client. The first thing I'll do is just talk to you a little bit about, again, PowerShell. And I wanted to distill, to some extent, what are the really sort of basic things you need to know about PowerShell. And I think you can distill it into 3 commandlets that everyone should know. The first one of them is get command. And this is, you log into a computer, and you need to know, what can I do on a computer? What can I do with PowerShell on this computer? So you run get command, and it shows you quite a bit of quite a few commandlets here. So there's scripts, there's commandlets, and probably on the order of 100, 200 maybe commandlets that are available to me. That's quite a bit. So I need to drill down a little bit. So the first thing I can do is, now I know I need to get something. Let me just say get -*, and now it just shows me all the get commandlets. Right, so that list is quite a bit smaller now. Now I've figured out, okay, you know what, I need to manage services, for instance. So you can now apply the wildcard on the other side of the verb, for the verb in this case, and you just get a very simple set of commandlets that, and it's fairly intuitive now that, okay, now I can get a service, I can create a new service, I can restart a service, resume, so on and so forth. The second commandlet that everyone should know, in my opinion, is get help. This moves you along in the path of discoverability. So now that you've figured out, okay, I need to get a service, how do I know how to use that commandlet? And get help helps you with that. By default, it just shows you how get help works. But if you need to know, okay, I have a command called get command, I need to figure out how it really works. I do that. And again, you see the consistency, the same formatting for help applied everywhere. The final commandlet I think that everyone should know, if you can learn only 3 today, is get member. And this, as I said in my slides, PowerShell is all .NET based. And instead of writing text to the screen, it writes objects. And so given an object, you need to know what can I do with that object, and that's what get member helps you with. So I call get process, and I say, what kind of object is this? And it tells me that it's, excuse me here, it's a system.diagnostics.process. And those of you who've opened MSDN will know this is the regular .NET process object. And it has all of the methods, properties that you may be familiar with. Another important thing in PowerShell is that when you start using PowerShell, you don't have to throw away your existing infrastructure. So if you have existing command line tools that you've built up along the years, you don't have to completely throw them away when you start using PowerShell and start writing your scripts in PowerShell. You can continue using them, and in some ways, actually, they work better. And what do I mean by that? So this is ipconfig. This is the regular ipconfig that everyone knows and loves. Run it, and it, just like it would normally, it shows me my IP configuration. But this is where it gets interesting. In the CMD world, if you want to parse the output from ipconfig, it's quite tedious. At least personally, I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you exactly how to do it. In PowerShell, the strings that are returned here are all .NET strings, so you can filter against them in a fairly intuitive fashion. So here you can see I'm calling ipconfig, and I'm saying, just return me the lines where there is an IP address on the line. And here you have it in 5 minutes, I know this is the IP address, and if I wanted to automate against that, I have that one line to figure out the computer's IP address. Before I move on to the PowerShell appv commandlets, there's just one more thing I want to show you. This is the PowerShell ISE. And as I said, if you're writing scripts as part of your job, this is how you want to do it. That tab completion is something that is built throughout PowerShell. So whenever you're calling a command, it tells you exactly what is available for you. And you can just hit enter and run the command. And this is the script engine, the scripting pane where you would actually be editing your script. And as I said, it has a debugger built in, so you can set breakpoints, you can inspect variables when the breakpoints are hit, and so forth. Now just a quick overview of ISE. Obviously, there's a lot of functionality there. There's no way I could cover all of it. So now let's start looking at the appv commandlets. All of the commandlets, as I said, ship as part of some module. When you start using appv, you might want to know, hey, what are the different modules available to me? Or even not for appv. So you do get module list available, and it shows you all the modules that are available to you. And you look at the bottom, and you see, here's the AppV client module. So before I can start using the commandlets in there, I need to import that module. Once I've imported, I want to find out what are the commandlets available to me. Simple command, there's two different ways you could use it. The first one is, I know the module name, so just give me the commands for that module. And here's the 27 commandlets that I was talking about. Actually, the other way of doing it is, and this leverages the incredible amount of consistency we have. If you notice, all of the nouns are prefaced with appv. So now that you know that, you can just say get command star appv star, and it gives you the same set of commandlets. The first commandlet that at least I think I use when I log into any computer, probably the most, is get appv client package. And as the name implies, this shows you all of the packages that you have configured on the machine. At this point, I don't have any, so it doesn't return any. Let's add a package. While I'm going to do this, I'm going to show you one last thing in PowerShell that I think is really useful. And this is something new in PowerShell v3. It's a commandlet called show command. When you start using a commandlet and you're not quite sure how to use it, you can use show command, and it launches this window. And in this window, you can play around with different options that are available to you. Anything that has an asterisk is a mandatory parameter. So I can tell that the path, in this case, is mandatory. I'm going to take this path over here, just paste it in here. And I can see there's other options available, like the dynamic deployment configuration, but that's not mandatory, so I'm going to ignore that. And then the common parameters, I can use them if I want, don't need to. Once I have everything filled out, I just say run. It actually runs the command right there. So again, this is a sort of a quick and easy way to learn a new commandlet when you're not familiar with it. It's a good point to also talk about the output from add appv client package. This is the object that we return from all of the client package commandlets. And just to walk you quickly through what all of these things are, these two are the package identifiers, as we call them, the package ID and the version ID. You never have to, these are both generated by the sequencer or the package converter when you convert packages. The name is the friendly name, which you may specify in the sequencer. This is the version. Every time you edit or upgrade a package, this version would get updated. That's the path where I'm streaming the package from, and a few other bits of information around whether the package is published to the user, published globally, and so forth. Okay, so what's going on here? This might be it's working as expected, although you can see I added a package, and now I call get appv client package, and it doesn't show me any packages. What's going on? So by default, add package is only adding the package to the catalog on the machine. It is not making it available to the user, not publishing it to the user. And by default, get appv client package only shows you packages that are published to the user. But if I want to see all of the packages, even the ones that are not published, I can specify the -all flag. And now it shows me the package that I added earlier, and you can see that it says it's not published to the user or not published globally, and not published globally. To actually make it available for the user, very straightforward, publish appv client package, and I'm just going to give it the name, and it publishes. And now you can see I have 7-zip installed on my machine. Again, the same package that we were getting earlier, now it says it is published to the user, and you'll also notice that the % loaded has changed, meaning now that we've configured the package, we have streamed in some bits, it's showing more than the 0% loaded, essentially. To make the package, to unpublish the package, again, very intuitive. We had publish to publish the package, now we have unpublish. You'll also notice that I'm not specifying -name completely, I'm just giving it just enough for it to figure out I mean name. And this, again, works consistently across PowerShell. Wherever you have a parameter name, you only need to give it enough for it to disambiguate that that is the parameter name you mean. So now the package is gone, no 7-zip. You can also specify parameters positionally. In this case, you can say, I don't have a dash name in front of it. PowerShell, again, is smart enough to know you're giving me a string, and the string needs to be applied to the dash name parameter. So again, just works. Nothing fancy. Same with unpublish and with remove. Now, there's different ways of using these commandlets, and by far my favorite way of using these commandlets is to pipe things from one commandlet to another. I really find this useful because it allows me to compose a really complex command line one by one. So I can figure out, okay, I need to do this, then pipe it to that commandlet, and then pipe it to another commandlet, and so forth. So what you can see here is I'm taking the output from add appv client package, and I'm just piping it to publish. And so that allows me to add and publish the package in one shot. If I'm now going offline and I'm going to be on a plane and I'm not going to have connectivity for a while, I can do mount appv client package, and that makes the package available offline. So now you can see %loaded is set to 100. Again, just like I published and added and published in a pipeline, and I can also unpublish and remove in a pipeline. Now, adding one package at a time, kind of interesting, but automation is really meant for doing the same operation n number of times. So I have a few packages on this machine. I want to add all of them, but I don't want to sit through each package one by one. So this is why piping, I think, is really useful, because the first thing I'm going to do is, okay, this is the command that I need to run to get a list of all the appv files on my machine. dir *-appv-s. Once I have the list of packages, I can just pipe its output to add appv client package. And there we go. I've added all of those packages in one shot. We also have wildcard support built in pervasively throughout all of our commandlets. Wherever you expect it to work, so wherever you have a string, you can supply a wildcard. So I want to see all of the XML star packages, and I see I have one. I can also use wildcards for publish, or as I said, anywhere else. So now I publish the XML notepad package using wildcards. I can also just do star, in which case it's going to publish all of the packages. And now you can see I have Reader 9, Notepad 2, Paint.NET, 7-zip, everything. Same with unpublish and remove. You can use a wildcard, remove everything. Again, going back to the concept of having objects in PowerShell, the objects we emit to the console are also live objects that you can actually interact with. So here I'm going to take the output from add appv client package and assign it to a variable. And I see I have the same type of object that I had earlier. But now I can pipe it to get member to see what kind of object is that. Now you can see here this is the type name, and it has a bunch of different properties that we display by default. But it also has these functions attached to it. So you can add, you can stop a package, you can set, repair, all of these things. So do you think I can do this? This is going to remove the package? Sure enough. No more package. To complete this notion of using commandlets in different ways, there is one final way that you can use these commandlets, which is to be very explicit about what package you want. On all the previous instances, I've used name, and name is not a unique field, so you could have 7-zip, 2 packages with the same name, for instance. What I'm going to do this time around is I'm going to say, I want to publish this package, and I'm going to specify the package ID and the version ID. And there's only one package that can ever exist with that package ID and version ID. So this isn't something you would use in interactive use, but if you're automating some solution, writing some script, and you want to be absolutely sure which package you're managing, you can use the package ID and the version ID. Same with publish, and that's it. So again, different ways of using the commandlets. Which one you use on a regular basis is really up to you. Whatever you find comfortable, whatever you find more useful for you. As I said, for me personally, pipeline is the way to go. That's what I try to do always. So moving on, here's maybe a useful chart for you to look at, kind of a cheat sheet. I'm not going to talk about this much, but on the left you have the SFT mime commands that you may be familiar with, and then on the right side you have the equivalent PowerShell commandlets. So the next set of commandlets that I want to talk about is the server management commandlets. These are the commandlets that get installed on the management server and really targets two different scenarios. The first one being package management and connection group management. Very similar to how you would do it on the client, except obviously you're doing this on the server. So the set of operations that are available to you might be slightly different, but a very similar idea. You're maybe adding packages, creating new connection groups, and so forth. And then the second scenario that we've targeted is managing your management server. The one big task here, obviously, is you have one management server, and you need to configure n number of publishing servers with it. So we have commandlets available for you to do that. Again, here's the nouns, and it's very straightforward on the server. There's 3 nouns that you need to think of: the appv server package, appv server connection group, and appv publishing server. So the appv server package and appv server connection group, you'll notice the names are very similar to the client commandlets, the nouns that we used on the clients. They just have server in place of the client. And this is, we've done this just to make sure that you know exactly which object you are interacting with at any given point. By the way, before I get too far ahead, I should also mention, you'll notice a few asterisks on these nouns. And the asterisks are basically for things that are not yet implemented in the beta. These will be coming up shortly, but right now we don't have this support in the beta. Lastly, the third role that you can think of is the sequencer role. And on the sequencer, we have two basic scenarios that we are targeting. The first one being the package converter. Dilip did a really good overview of the package converter earlier today. So I'm not going to talk about that this much today. But if you want to look at how the package converter works and how those commandlets work, you should go check out his session, which will be made available in a couple of days online. And then the second scenario here is for doing sequencer management. So again, you can think of this as being very analogous to the SFT sequencer command line that used to exist on 4.6. The nouns, the verbs that apply to the appv package, which is the noun you would use for doing sequencer automation, you can see new, update, and expand. These are you can think of these as almost being one-to-one mapping between in the packaging UI. So you have a new package wizard, and if you wanted to do the same operation in an automated fashion, you would use the new appv package commandlet. And then same with update and expand. The appv package accelerator, that's the noun you would use for creating new package accelerators. As you know, we have a contest going on right now, so we hope, well, not this, we have that going for 4.6 SP2, so create new package accelerators. Okay, enough talking again. I'm going to move back to my demo machine. And there's 3 more things that I want to show you in, again, the client commandlets. The first one is how to use dynamic deployment configuration using the PowerShell commandlets. So just to set up this demo for you, what I'm going to be doing here is looking at XML Notepad and how to configure the shortcuts that XML Notepad deploys to your machine, and how do you configure them using the deployment config. So the first thing I obviously need to do is make the package available. And as you can see, when I publish the package, it adds a shortcut to the desktop. Now, in my deployment, I don't want the desktop on the shortcut to go right on the desktop. I want it to go in a AppV shortcuts folder there, where I can consolidate all the shortcuts that go on the desktop. So how would I accomplish that? Oops, I launched XML Notepad there. Just give me a second. It does show that it is actually on the machine. So first, I remove the package. And then the next thing you need to do is edit the deployment config. And I've already done this. I'm just going to walk you through the changes that I've made. Here's the deployment config that gets produced by the sequencer or the package converter. And it has a lot of options in it. You can configure shortcuts. You can configure file type associations here. And you can also do package scripts. So you can you can launch user scripts as part of the start process or terminate process and so forth. The only change I've made here is I looked for the shortcut that was going on the desktop, and I've just edited that shortcut path to have a directory name in it. So you can see this is the old file name, and then this is the new one, which has AppV shortcuts in the name. Once I've made the change, I need to use the deployment config when I'm adding the package. So you can see this is the same command that we were using earlier to add packages, except in this case, I'm using the optional dynamic deployment configuration command line parameter, and then I'm specifying I'm giving it the XML file that we just edited, and I'm piping that output to publish to make it available to the user. There you have it. Now the shortcut is actually going inside a desktop. This is obviously a very simple case, but you can imagine adding new shortcuts. You can imagine changing shortcuts on your start menu and doing all of those things. Now the next thing I'm going to show is the deployment config is machine-wide, meaning you have typically one deployment config per package. But you can also configure a package per user, and that's what you use the user config for. And so once I deployed this package to my deployment, someone telling me, hey, I don't want any shortcut on my desktop. I don't like it. Don't clutter my desktop at all. So I'll show you how to do that quickly. Obviously, I want all of the other users to get that directory, but for this particular user, I'm going to create a new user config file. And this user config file is, the only change is I look for the desktop shortcut, and I'm just going to completely remove it. Since the user config is a per user XML file, you specify that at publish time, not during the add time. So here you'll see that I'm publishing the package, and I'm using the dynamic user config path parameter and specifying the edited XML file that we just looked at. And now you'll see that there is no shortcut on the desktop, but the XML Notepad is published on the machine, and it still has a start menu shortcut. The next thing I want to talk about is how to do connection groups. Now, the most user-friendly way of doing connection groups is perhaps in the server management UI. And Asim did a really good job yesterday in his overview session of showing you how to do connection groups on the server. But there are some scenarios where you need to do connection groups on the client. Perhaps you're doing your user acceptance testing so far right now, or you're evaluating the AppV product, and you don't have a full configuration, a full deployment yet. So it is possible on let me just start the demo here real quick. So it is possible on the client, and it's actually quite powerful to do it on the client. We were talking yesterday with some folks who want to create a lot of different connection groups for thousands of plugins that go into one package. And there are different ways that those packages can be composed together. So as I said, it is quite powerful, and I'll show you how to do this. What I'm going to do here is I have an Office package. This is the exact same demo that Asim showed you yesterday. I have an Office package and a Visio package, and I'm going to show you how to get them to work together with each other. There is a Visio document here, and or rather a Word document. Let me open this doc. And right now, both of those packages, I've published both Office and Visio, and they're both not in they're not in a connection group yet. So I'm going to launch this document. And this is first launch, so it's going to take just a second here. So I have a very fancy Visio diagram. And you can see when I right-click on it, it knows that it's a Visio diagram, but I cannot edit the document in here. I can only convert it. But I do want some users to be able to edit the document in Word. So how do I do that? Here's the basic connection group document. This is an XML file which is used to describe the connection group on the client machine. And it's fairly straightforward. The first few lines here are just template. You can copy them from any connection group. These three lines are important. These describe the connection group. So you have the connection group ID and the connection group version ID. You cannot just copy them from one connection group document to another. You have to create new GUIDs every single time. And then you have the display name here, which is the user-friendly name. And then the most important part is certainly the appv packages node. And here you see I have two packages listed here, both the package ID and the version IDs for them. And if I flip back, you can see the Office package is listed first. And then I have the Visio package that is listed second. So now that I've created this document, I can add the connection group, and just like with packages, it's a two-step process. So you add the connection group, and then you enable it for a user. Now you can see I've added this connection group, and it is enabled to the user. I'm going to launch that document again. And again, this is first launch for Word again, so it's going to take just a short amount of time. Again, the Visio diagram in there. And now if I right-click and go to the menu option, I have the edit option there, which I didn't before. So that's a quick and easy way to create connection groups on the client. And obviously, the connection group document is fairly straightforward, so you can imagine writing fairly straightforward scripts for creating new documents given n number of packages that you may have. So that's the connection group demo. The last thing that I want to show you is a few commandlets, a couple of commandlets that we have for troubleshooting. And the one common task that you need to do when you're troubleshooting a package on the client is you need to launch native applications inside the VE, which is the virtual environment. And you want to do this a lot of times because you want to see what kind of environment is the virtual application seeing. So how do you do this? In 4.6, you have the SFT tray option, and in appv 5.0, we have start appv virtual process. And the way you use it is you find the package that you want to use to launch the VE in, and that's what I did here. I want to launch a package in the Office package. And using that package, I can start an virtual process. Here you can see I'm specifying the appv client object and using the package object that I have in that variable. And then this is the command, this is the exe that I want to launch. And I'm just going to launch CMD here. So what is it saying there? I don't know if hopefully you can read the text, but what it's basically saying is this package is part of a connection group. And if it is, then you have to use the connection group to launch the virtual application in, because you have a virtual environment for the connection group not for the application. Since I only have one connection group, I know I can just use it inline. So you can see very similar command line to before, except no variables. I'm just going to call get_app client connection group inline. And here I have CMD running virtual. And to show you it's running virtual, I'm going to launch registry editor. And here, this is HKLM, software, Microsoft, Office. And you can see all of these registry keys that get laid down by Office when it installs. And to show you that that really was inside the virtual environment, I'm going to launch a registry editor outside of the virtual environment. And I'm in the same path now, and you can see there is nothing. There's just one registry key that gets laid down outside of Office. One really important thing to note is that the start appv virtual process inherits a lot of functionality from the built-in start process commandlet. So if you've been using start process before, you can expect start appv virtual process to have the exact same functionality that start process does. And so one of the things that start process uses is a -wait flag, which you can use to wait on a process to exit before the commandlet returns. And here I'm going to use that flag with start appv virtual process. And you can see that the commandlet hasn't returned yet until I close down this virtual process. So again, this is a very important concept for you because you don't have to learn two different ways of doing things. If you have learned start process and you know how to use it, you can use start appv virtual process and it works exactly the same, except you have to specify the one extra parameter that we use. The other side of the appv virtual process noun is the get part, where this is how you would query the system for running virtual processes. So here you can see I have only one virtual process running at this time. Again, very similar concept to start. It inherits a lot of the functionality from the built-in get process commandlet. If you know how to use it, you can expect get appv virtual process to behave exactly the same way. And one of the things that get process supports is the -file version info flag, which tells you the version information for the main exe that is running in that process. And it works exactly the same way for us. Now, a lot of times when you're troubleshooting, you want to know, well, it's great I know that this process is running virtual, but I want to know what package it is running under. And that you can do by inspecting the process object that we return. And this process object is almost exactly the same as the one I showed you in the basic demo earlier, except you'll notice if you look carefully, there is an appv package data member that is associated with this object. And this is something we add to the process object in the get appv virtual process commandlet. And what this gives us is this is the field in the process object where we store all of the virtual package data essentially. So now that I know it's the appv package data that stores all of this information, I can tell PowerShell to show me what is inside that field. And here you can see, using that one simple command, I know that it's CMD that is running virtual, and it's running in a VE called Office Visio. So the package name here can be either the application, the package that it is running under, or the connection group. And same with the package ID and the version ID. If the VE is for a package, this would be the VE, this would be the process ID, the package ID and the version ID for that package. If you're running under a connection group, you would get the package ID and version ID for the connection group. How do I stop processes? Well, just like any other process. And that's it. Moving back, there is one final part of my talk. As I said earlier, this is sort of the more advanced part of the session. And so let's first talk about why would you want to integrate into your existing tools, right? So there could be multiple reasons. Maybe you're building a tool, as I said, you have a custom ESD solution that you want to integrate AppV into, and you need to be able to use PowerShell commandlets from your ESD solution. And this is something that a few of our customers do, and we get this request from them. The natural way you might want to translate, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, I was calling SFT MIME earlier. I was just creating that process every time I wanted to do something. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing, but I'm going to launch PowerShell this time. That, in our opinion, is the wrong thing to do for a couple of reasons. The most important one, in my opinion, is the fact that you are now stuck in the old world again, meaning you are launching a process that is going to write text, and you're going to have to parse the text to figure out, well, did it succeed? Did it not succeed? How do I know what data it returned to me? And you're going to have to do text parsing for that. The other reason is, especially if you're calling into PowerShell repetitively, you're doing it in a loop or so forth, you can have a performance hit associated with it because you're launching PowerShell every single time. So the recommended way of doing this is to host PowerShell, the PowerShell engine, in your application. And this, again, sounds really fancy and sounds really something that would be hard to do. It's actually pretty straightforward, and that's the key takeaway that I want you to have from here. There is one very simple, straightforward API that you should look at. That's the system.management.automation.PowerShell object. And you look that up on MSDN, and it gives you the starting point for doing all of these things. Since this is a .NET API, you can use it from any language that supports .NET. So VB, C#, everything is good. And just to sort of drive home the point that this is a legitimate way of doing things and a recommended way of doing things, this is actually something we use in the AppV product in a couple of different places. So the client management UX that you've all seen by now, the Metro style UX, that is actually built on top of our PowerShell commandlets. There is no other API. We are using the commandlet as part of that. And secondly, the sequencer-generated MSIs, the little MSIs that we give you to add a package to a machine, those are also built using the PowerShell commandlets. So I'm going to do a demo next of how you do this. So I have Visual Studio here, and I'm going to do something really brave. I'm going to try to write code live for you. So this might go completely south, in which case we'll see what happens. So this is going to be a very simple sort of canonical hello world application. All I really want to do is list the packages that are available to me on this machine. And a few things to point out. I've added a reference to system.management.automation. This is an assembly that you can download. It's part of the PowerShell SDK. So you download that, create a new solution, add a reference to that assembly, use that namespace here, and you're good to go. The first thing we need to do is instantiate the PowerShell object. And the way you do that is, this is the name, and all you do is, and that instantiates a new PowerShell instance inside of your process. Once you have that PowerShell instance, what can you do with it? Well, there's two ways you can use it. One is to add commands, and you can, when you add commands, you add them one by one, so you can think of this as running one single command at a time. That's not very interesting for us, so we're going to go the add script route. And what this does is, say add script, and now you can type in 1 line of script, 10 lines of script, 100 lines of script. It doesn't matter. You just type it in or copy it in from somewhere. For us, what we want to type in is fairly simple. We just want to import module AppV client, and then once we have the module imported, what command do we want to run? Anyone want to take a guess? Since we want to list the packages on the computer, on the machine. Yes. So get AppV client package. So now you've added the script. Now you need to run the script. How do you do that? Again, very straightforward. You have the object in hand. You just say invoke, and you're done with it. But you need to look at the returned objects that you're getting back. So what I'm going to do next is just take invoke returns a collection of objects. So we can enumerate over that collection by just saying for each PS object in this. And now this for each object, for each will run for each object that is returned by my script. And once I have the objects in hand, I want to just display, this is a simple hello world demo, as I said. All I want to do is display the package name. So console.writeLine. Aha, missed something here. Result, and what it gives you back is a PS object is sort of a container object, and what it contains is the object that is returned by the commandlet, and it is all wrapped up in a nice to use sort of a container object. And what I'm going to use here is the members field, and that's a hash table. So in the hash table, I just reference, I want to show just the name. So what I'm saying is, look at the result that is returned, give me the name property that is in the object, and since I just want to show it, display it, I'm going to say, give me the value for that. And I think that's it, so I'm going to run this. Oh, that was rather quick, which is the whole point, by the way. So for you to be able to see this, I'm going to do a read line at the end. So it'll pause for us. So here, just one package on my machine, XML Notepad, and it's waiting for me. I'm going to just hit next. And to show you it's the same as you would get from the console, I'm going to do the same thing here. And I have one package. Of course, the PS object is fairly rich, so I'm doing something fairly straightforward here, but you can also call any of the methods that are available. You can do a lot of things here. One final thing I want to point out, although I was lucky, my demo just worked. A lot of times you will do this, you will launch a script, and you won't get any errors, but you won't get any results back from invoke either. And what usually happens is when you're running a script, you may have a typo in your script or some sort of error in your script. And invoke doesn't give you those errors. For you to be able to see those errors, you have to look at the error stream for PowerShell. So I'm going to just display the error stream here, console.writeLine PS streams error dot. I'm just going to show the count. This is a simple demo, as I said. So as you can see, right now it's saying 0 errors. But what can sometimes happen is when you're typing in a script, you may get something wrong and you may have a typo. And how do you know this? Well, see, now I didn't get the XML Notepad, the name displayed here, but I do get an error back. I'm not showing you the actual error in here, but you get the point. So that was a quick demo, as I said, for you to walk away with. You may not be the person responsible for writing this sort of stuff in your, you may be or may not be, but at least the key takeaway for you should be that this is easy to do. It isn't something that you should shy away from. Certainly, this is the way you should do it as opposed to calling out to PowerShell. This is the same code for reference and the same code in VB. So that's pretty much it for my session. So here's the key, as I said, the takeaways that I want you to walk away with. The first one is obviously that PowerShell is part of a rich ecosystem. This is really important to you, as I said, because almost anything that you will think of doing with PowerShell, someone has probably already done it, and you can leverage their learnings and their takeaways and just use their work, basically. We do have an extensive set of commandlets across the whole product. Today I've focused primarily on the client commandlets, but I've shown you the different options available on the server and the sequencer. So I hope you walk away thinking, you know what, whatever I think of doing with AppV, I can do it with PowerShell. And obviously, the last thing is that there is a simple and powerful extensible model in PowerShell. So if you want to integrate PowerShell into your existing tools, there is an easy way to do it, and it's not going to be hard. Finally, again, the reminder of the contest. We have a contest going on for the package accelerators and UEV templates. We're also announcing today a new section on the TechNet galleries for PowerShell automation. So if you go to TechNet galleries, there used to be, you've always had the package accelerators section. Well, today we've also added an automation section. And right now there's only one script there, which I added earlier today. But you can all, when you go back and start playing around with AppV 5.0, the things that you learn, the little quirks that you learn, you can all post your scripts on the TechNet Center. So here's all the links for you and all the sessions that are pretty much done at this point. And as a final reminder again, fill in your evaluations. Those are really important definitely for me. I'm pretty much done at this point. We can do one of two things. We can do a Q&A, or we can do something risky. And if you want to see something in PowerShell, go up to the mic and tell me what you would want me to show you, and I'll see if I can do it. So, I'm sorry? So,
I got one.
Sure.
So I'm new to PowerShell, and I have a lot of textual processing that I have to do in XML. It's a fairly strong schema, but what I'm trying to do is grab a bunch of XML objects and do a sum over a particular field.
Yep.
I can do that in .NET. It's at the top of my list when I get back, but I figure I'll challenge myself to try to do it in PowerShell. Maybe you can save me a little bit of time and give me a hint.
Well, let me see if I have an XML file here somewhere. I do, actually. So this is where you should basically start. What I'm doing here is getting the content for the XML file and casting it to an XML object and giving it to the XML variable. And this is a fairly rich object. If you've already done this in .NET, it's actually the very same object that you're familiar with. And you can do any of the things that you've done with .NET already. You can see this is a system.xml.xml document. And all of those things that you've done will just work in PowerShell as well. Obviously, your exact scenario I cannot show you here. But that's how you would start.
I have a question for you. You said that we had to invoke the module or import the module. Earlier on, we were hearing in PowerShell 3.0, as long as your environment's set up properly, it's not necessary?
So the question was, if you, in PowerShell version 3, you still have to import the module before you start using commandlets. You're absolutely right. In V3, you do not have to do that. Since we don't have that dependency yet, I wanted to show you what you actually have to do with V2.
And could you display that evaluation?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you get information from an AppV package using PowerShell before you've imported it into your client, or?
Yeah. This is going to be tricky to type in on the stage, but it is possible. Do you want to see it now, or do you want to stop by later? I'll show you later, because it's kind of tricky. The names are long. These are my colleagues. If you have colleagues like this, who needs enemies? Anything else?
I got one. Can you show us the syntax for getting this against a remote client?
I'm sorry?
A remote client?
Remote client?
Yeah.
Sure. The first thing you usually have to do is to enable remoting, because that by default isn't enabled. So the first thing I'm going to do is enable PS remoting force. And that's it's going to configure the machine to accept something was going to go wrong. But imagine for a moment that remoting is configured. The one-to-one remoting is fairly straightforward. You just do enter PS session, and then you give it the machine name. In this case, we'll just do localhost, and let's see if it works. Sorry. Turn on the firewall. I'm on a private network. I'm going to just turn off everything. No, sorry. But that would be the sort of the telnet way of doing things. If you want to run commands, as I said, 1 to n, where you have one script that you want to run on a pool of 100 machines or whatnot, you would use the invoke command. And this has a computer name. And this computer name can be one computer, or it can be a list of 10 computers, 20 computers. And then you can just give it a script block, and you say, I want to run get appv client package on all of these machines. So that's sort of how you would do it.
Another one. In your example where you use .NET to actually instantiate a PowerShell engine and grab PowerShell objects with it, the PowerShell objects know their .NET base class.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any type of reflection in the PowerShell object to allow you to recast that up to its full .NET class and operate upon it?
Yes. So you would have to add a reference to in your project. You would have to add a reference to our assemblies, and then you have a way to use the. Let me just go back to the. So here I'm using just the regular invoke, but there is a generic invoke as well. So you can, if you add a reference to our assembly, then you can use the generic invoke and say, basically just cast all of those objects that are coming back into the
Right, I got that, but can you do it through reflection? Is the PS object reflectable? Or maybe it's not, that's probably not the right phrase, because I imagine that the base class is a property of the PS object itself, because GetMember exposed it.
Yeah, so everything is reflectable, but you won't get the intuitive way of using those objects unless you, at compile time, you know what the definition of those objects is. Then the only way to do that would be to add a reference to our assembly and then use the generic invoke and say, these are the objects that are coming back.
Okay, thanks.
On the conversion process,
Mm-hmm.
directly related to PowerShell, though, you mentioned 4.5 and 4.6 packages. What about 4.1 and 4.2?
The recommendation for those is to open them up in the 4.5 or 4.6 sequencer, save those packages out, and then you'll be able to convert them. I actually think with the 4.6 sequencer, you can automate that. Yeah. But again, I can give you my card after this, and we can confirm that.
I don't know if it's on the server side or the client side, but is there, show us the commands that might be able to list which AD groups are assigned or given access to each package?
You definitely can do that with the server commandlets. But on the client, you basically just have, it's your computer and your user. So yeah, server commandlets, yes. That's it. That's it.